For this lesson, we're going to look at arrays and lists. Now, an array is a data structure which can store multiple values under one name or an identifier. Now, all the values in an array have to be of the same data type. An array can not grow or shrink as well. That's why we call it a static data structure. It cannot grow in size. You have to declare the size of the array at the start. Now, a list is slightly different. It's also a data structure. It can also store multiple values under one identifier. However, a list can grow and it can shrink as well. You can take data out of it. You can add data to it. And also, the main difference between the two is that in Python, we also use the square brackets, but if it grows or shrink, or if it has multiple data types, then that's not an array, it's a list. But the way you create it is exactly the same as the way you create an array. Now, here we have a list. So numbers equals, then open the square bracket and close the square bracket. So this is basically creating a list or an array. It's exactly the same thing. Then we have for x in range of 4. This loops 4 times. This creates a for loop that loops 4 times. Then num equals int input. We're asking for a number. And what we're doing is numbers.append. Now append means adding something to the end. What we've done here is we're adding something to the end of numbers. So the array is called numbers, or the list, and we're adding something to the end. And in brackets, you specify what you want to add to the end of it. Now if you put num, it will add that number to the end of the array. Then we put in print numbers. This will print the final array. So here we have an example of how it runs. So we got 5, 2, 3, 1. You can see adds to the end. 1 is empty, 5 is added at the start, then 2 at the end, then 3 at the end, then 1 at the end, depending on the order that we entered them. So append just means adding something to the end. So we started with an empty list, and then we end up with 4 items in the list. Now this is a list because it grew in size. Now it started with 0 items inside it and it ended up with 4 items. Because it grew in size, that's why it's called a list rather than an array, even though the concept is exactly the same. Here we have another example. So name list, we created a list called name list, an empty one. So we don't put anything inside it. Then we use the for loop to loops 4 times. Then we ask for a name. So name equals input, ask for a name, and then namelist.append, this adds something to the end of namelist. And what we're adding to the end of namelist is the name. So we put name. Then we print namelist. Now I indented this on purpose to allow you to see how it works. Normally you wouldn't indent it because you only want to see the array once rather than all the time. So I've indented that and put it in the for loop. So at the start, when we enter Tom, you can see Tom is added at the end of the list. There's only one. Then enter name, and yeah, any is added to the end of the list as well because we used .append, then Ron, then Sam. Everything is added at the end of the list. And this is the concept of list, so you can use that as well in Python.